This is 24 in 42. Welcome to 24 in 42, where we get to learn the life, universe, and everything of an author. And today we get the famous, infamous Mark Finn, who I have been fortunate enough to actually meet in real life several times. And I got to tell you, when I stack the books that we've worked together on, I've got a foreword to Rage of the Behemoth. I've got a great superhero story in No Ordinary Mortals. I've got an essay in Hither Came Conan arguing about a Conan story. I've got a life impact of Robert E. Howard. And I've got an entertaining space opera type story in The Empire of Salt. So Mark and I have done a lot of work together.
We have, yeah.
This is where I usually say the genres someone writes, but I can't think of one Mark doesn't write. So this is where Mark gets to tell us what he does.
Hey folks, my name is Mark Finn, and I am an author and an editor and a game designer and a pop culture critic, for want of a better description. Not necessarily in that order. So,
where do you call headquarters?
Vernon, Texas, also known as the North Texas Apocalypse Bunker, a totally real, not at all made up place.
And for those of you that follow that, you can find that on Facebook and Substack?
Substack, yep.
Okay.
NTAB.
All right. Well, this is, for those maybe tuning in for the first time, what we try to do here is ask 24 questions in 42 minutes. I give the author 16 of the 24 in advance, help streamline things so they don't have to go and ah on some harder questions. But there's 8 of them that are a little bit more tongue-in-cheekish, and put them on the spot for a moment. But it's all in fun, right?
Yes.
We are going to start our timer here. And we are off. Question number 1, sir. What color do you write in?
I write in black and white. And whenever possible, I will try to make shades of gray. Yep.
Very good. City or country kid? Where'd you grow up, and did you grow up with friends hanging out with you?
I was a city kid, but it always felt like I was a country kid. I grew up in Abilene, Texas in the 1970s, which had a mall and hobby shops and places where I could buy Dungeons and Dragons and a magic store where I could learn magic and all that kind of stuff. But because I was in West Texas, surrounded by desert, it always felt like I was marooned. I know now that I wasn't, but and yeah, it was hard to find other kids who were into the same stuff as me. But as I got into my teens and tweens and all that, with Dungeons and Dragons and other stuff, I was able to navigate some friendships that way. But yeah, I was usually the kid that orchestrated play rather than waited for someone to come up with something. I was the guy that said, all right, we're playing Spaceman or whatever we're doing.
I'm finding that comment in this interview that the people I'm interviewing are the originators.
Yep.
How does Abilene's population then and now stack up?
Like everything in Texas, it's gotten more populated and more crowded. At the time, Abilene was about 100,000, and it had come off of an oil boom.
Okay.
So oil hit in that region in the 60s and brought this huge influx of wealth. So there was all these high-end stores and things like that were there. And then it kind of went away. And I found out later, years later, like a few years ago, that the stealth bomber was actually being developed at Dyess Air Force Base, which is right outside of Abilene, which meant that had, the Cold War played out, I would have been one of the top 10 cities wiped off the map. So yeah, that was a little interesting, but the military base there kept a lot of people coming in and out, and it's been a kind of a medium-sized city, I think, for as long as, ever since I was a kid up to right now,
Yep. Hey, getting underneath that school desk would have saved your ass.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. Just in the hallway, tucked down. Clearly, that's all you needed.
I'm gonna guess I know the answer to this one, but if you stumbled across the yellow brick road, would you follow it?
Oh yes, I would. Mostly because I think I could do the wizard's job better than him. So yeah, that would be my plan. Would be to show up and uh, convince him to take an early retirement and head out to the forest and let me run things for a bit.
All right. When you're writing, what typically assails your ears?
I'm a music junkie, actually. I like having music playing in the background as long as it's something that sort of thematically assists me. Whenever I'm writing capers or heists, I kind of like that Charles Mingus style secret agent jazz.
Okay.
When I'm writing contemporary stories, I tend to listen to whatever rock song I think is appropriate for the era, and very occasionally I will build a playlist, but usually it's just sort of what I think would help me emotionally, when I'm writing, and that will sometimes change from paragraph to chapter to whatever.
Does lyrics matter?
Yeah, they do. I was gonna say a little bit, but nah, who am I kidding? Of course, it matters. I'm mildly addicted to storytellers and songwriters that make good use of the language. Warren Zevon seems to be one of those people that a lot of writers like because he's a writer's writer kind of a guy.
Right.
I was just talking about just the other day, Little Old Lady Got Mutilated Late Last Night is such a beautiful lyric for a song about werewolves.
Yeah.
Just that up and down, that cadence, that assonance and alliteration, the LA
Yep.
sound being repeated. Man, that's just you don't get that in, and you certainly don't get it in a lot of the music today being auto-tuned. So, I tend to be a dinosaur. I'm a 97-year-old man trapped in the body of somebody not quite that old.
I love that rhythm though. Yeah, and it helps when you're writing.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. Pre-18, preferably pre-16. Three of your favorite books you grew up loving.
Okay, so this is, I feel like I need to say Conan the Usurper.
You don't have to.
Some people here, some people here are going to get mad if I don't, but it's true anyways.
All right.
Conan the Usurper was my first introduction to Conan, the eighth book in the series, if you're following the saga. And so that was the one that was the lightning bolt to my head. That's got Beyond the Black River in it.
Yep.
There's not many other stronger like Conan stories you could start off with. So that was like a lightning bolt in my face. Probably the other one I would say is, well, the Fireside books, Origins of Marvel Comics.
Okay.
In the 70s, that stuff was all being reprinted in color in book form. And so it was a way for me to catch up on the stuff I'd missed, which felt like buried treasure, really, and then this is a weird one, but I can prove it with math. There was a book called Movie Monsters by Alan Ormsby. I got it from Scholastic in the Weekly Reader, and it was just literally about like movie monsters, talking about how the makeup was done, and here's how you can do your own special effects makeups and Halloween stuff. And as a monster kid in the 70s, boy, that unlocked a lot in me. And I've carried all of that with me, to this day. I mean, those are, I still have real strong sense memories of mixing up blood with Caro syrup and, making warts out of eyelash adhesive and just all that kind of crazy stuff. So yeah, that was those three had an outsized effect on me.
That's a great combination. So prior to Conan and the Black River,
right.
And being a Texan, had you read Westerns? So did that feel like a world you're familiar with, or was that brand new for both?
That was new.
Okay.
Most of my Western experience was television. My grandfather was a huge fan of Maverick and Gunsmoke and
Yep.
John Wayne movies, and so I grew up with all that. But Conan was my introduction to Robert E. Howard, my introduction to Conan, and that was the thing that sort of coalesced all at once. I could feel blocks sliding into place. We're like, oh, this is what I want to try to do. That really was a kind of a Rosetta Stone. It was such a key thing for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a surprise one for you.
All
What
right.
was or is, you might still be watching it, your favorite cartoon, and when and where did you do it? Watch it.
All right. This should not come as a surprise either. Johnny Quest.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the few things my dad watched with me as a kid.
Okay.
He was a big aviation nut. He flew model aircraft, and Doug Wildey did a lot of technical research for Johnny Quest, and he and Alex Toth did a lot of development in that arena. And so that was my sort of, looking back on it, it presupposed my reading of the pulps
Okay.
and things like Raiders of the Lost Ark. But man, that was ground zero. And you can't discount Hoyt Curtin's theme.
Yeah.
The Johnny Quest theme.
Yep.
I get goosebumps now thinking about it, man.
Yep.
Just that I don't know of a better piece of music that sums up a show, works as a special effect. I mean, the only thing that might be close is Lalo Schifrin's Mission Impossible theme.
Okay.
Those two run neck and neck for me. But yeah, it's Johnny Quest by a long margin, followed by all of the other Alex Toth adventure and superhero shows from Hanna-Barbera. Those just remain in my wheelhouse.
And having the music seems to evoke memories, so having the memory of doing that with your dad too is important.
Huge.
What do you think is the best money you have ever spent on furthering your writing career?
All right, this is a cheat.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and I bought a notebook. I'm telling now, I know this is doofusy, because it's such a well, yeah, of course. What I got was a cheap notebook. Okay. This is a composition,
Right.
For math. Okay. 97 cents, man. And I got a pen. I used to love these pens as a kid, these 4-in-1s.
Yep. Okay.
Total outlay about $2.50. I'm not counting the cost of the stickers; they were free. But being able to write that down and develop ideas, hold on to a random thought until I come back on it later. A first draft of a blog post, getting back to putting my hand on a tactile writing instrument and feeling the paper underneath the pen or the pencil, that has been the single biggest tool that I've rediscovered or initially used and then got away from and then went back to.
Okay.
So I would recommend that everybody that wants to write, keep a notebook.
Yes.
You think to yourself, oh yeah, it's all up here, buddy, until it isn't. And trust me, there will come a day when it's not all up there. I swear to God. You may have kids, you may have a dog, you may have life, whatever it is, something's going to knock that weird thought out of your head that you were holding like spare change at the laundromat, and it's gone. So the notebook, I think, is essential for something like that.
I really like that because this question gets a wide range of answers. I believe earlier in season 1, I've had that answer, just that 4-color pen, 78 cents or whatever it was, all the way up to, getting a full writing degree. But they have very valid reasons for each one of those things.
Sure.
I still love the ones, the people that say conventions, made you get out of your skin and interact and meet your peers or the people trying to do the same thing you are. So, but yeah. Physically writing something, I'm relearning that skill myself, so it does motivate you.
It does, absolutely.
So when you're writing, do you think it's more difficult or a little bit easier if you feel emotion strongly?
I think it's easier, but I also think that makes it more elusive.
Okay.
Um, it's like trying to put your finger on, Mercury. You can't
Yep.
quite ever, and it's because when things are emotional, they tend to be real personal,
Yeah.
and it's tough sometimes because the impetus is to just sort of eructate and vomit it all up onto the page, and then you realize that that may be a little bit more than you want to share, and so I think that we second guess ourselves when
Sure.
we feel something very deeply, and it's sometimes hard to narrow down that thought into something that you can show to somebody else and they go, oh, I understand that. Um, there's there's a Bloom County cartoon from back in the day. Again, I'm 97 years old, but
Love Bloom County.
when a guy comes into the paper and says to Milo, "I got to hear a letter of opinion I'd like to register about the what you put in the paper today." And he goes, "Okay," and the guy says, "I mean, because the government and with the people and just stuff with the things and woo, I tell you, and hippies." Anyway, it's all in there. And Milo's looking at the paper going, verbatim. Love that. So perfect. But yeah, that's how I feel sometimes. And I know other people feel the same way, but boy, figuring out how to winnow it down into like the right thing to say, I think is key. But so yeah, it's both. I feel like that's a waffling answer, and I'm sorry.
No, no, but what just struck me as interesting is replaying all my interviews here. All of the people I've interviewed are fairly experienced to very much experienced writers. So, a secondary question that pops to mind is, has that changed? For example, early in your life as a writer, there's emotions that I hadn't felt
Yeah.
or not anywhere near the level I felt them now as an older writer and older
Right.
person. So I think it was challenging to write a few, maybe even true sorrow when I was younger,
Yeah.
uh, because you don't really know what that means till you've had true sorrow. You know?
That's 100% correct. When you're 15, horror movies are awesome because it's a special effect and it doesn't matter and
Yeah.
it's all fake and make believe, and then you find an act of violence or something that happens to you or someone and all of a sudden it changes. And I don't think it means we have to stop liking horror movies or whatever, but yeah, there's a different process. It matters more and it impacts more, and so I think that's just a part of growing up.
Yep.
But I also think we have a responsibility as artists to try and be as truthful as we can.
True.
I think good art imparts an emotion or
Yes.
makes you feel something, and so
Absolutely.
it's the trade-off.
Yep. I think that's the whole goal. You either need to intellectually stimulate your audience or emotionally stimulate. That's
That's
one
it.
of those two. If you can pull
Yep.
off both, awesome. Titles. Do you find them challenging? Are they easy? And where do you usually come up with them? Right away or after it's all done?
I that's one of that honestly, that is such a cart before the horse sort of a thing for me. I don't ever, unless in the idea of something, I get the title first. But that doesn't always work out because I never know what to do with it.
Okay.
Uh, I had an idea for a story I wanted to write years ago based on the title, which popped into my head all at once, called The Slot Machine of Dorian Gray.
Okay.
Basically, as long as he was playing the slot machine, he stayed young. And like I love the title, but that's not a story.
That is the story. Yeah.
That's yeah, it's its own thing.
Yeah.
So I tend to not think about titles until I'm done. If something comes along the way, cool, I'll make a note of it. But usually I'll find something in the story to to pull from, or it
Right.
suggests something. But I try not. That's actually one of the few things I don't sweat really.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm very fascinated by that because until I started having these conversations, I never really thought twice about it. But for me, I have a whole spreadsheet of titles that are fragments of a sentence in a Conan story, a lyric from a movie. I have written dozens, and they're not all published by any means, but I have written several stories based entirely off the title. Because like,
Yeah.
boom, title, boom, whole story. So
I will tell you the hardest title I ever came up with was Blood and Thunder.
really,
Well, because I'm trying to do this thing where I'm mentioning Robert E. Howard as a Texan, and I'm contextualizing him as a Texan, and so I'm like, oh, no, Lone Star Wreck, no.
Mhm.
Every good
That's true.
iteration had been used, and then the ones that weren't were sort of kind of like off in the left field, and so I settled for Blood. I still don't like it.
Okay.
I think it's too clunky, but at this point I can't get away from it. Oh, and thank you, Hampton Sides, for naming your Kit Carson history book Blood and Thunder. I appreciate that. You can't know how much. It's probably the thing I'm most proud of is that when you type Blood and Thunder into Amazon, what pops up is your book. So, Mr. Sides, this bud's for you, buddy.
And that doesn't even seem an appropriate title for Kit Carson.
That was the thing that kind of made me go, "Come on, really?"
Right.
I mean, you can't. What are we doing?
All right. Timelines. You have that idea pop in your head. Does it require? Well, some things will require research. Basically, I would like to get an impression of you think of something, you work it, you study it, you rewrite it, and then you finally are going to submit it to whatever market. How long does that usually take you?
Fiction comes a lot faster.
Okay.
And I will usually spend a week or two juggling pieces and parts until I have a rough idea in my head of how I want it to go. Shorter stories are less problematic, but longer pieces you sometimes have to. I plan beats,
Okay.
so that's usually no more than a couple of weeks from soup to nuts. Nonfiction, well, it just depends on what we're doing. I mean, I did a year of research on Blood and Thunder first edition and another 2 years worth of research for the update. So
Okay.
and then a thing that is going to be coming out soon from A&M University's Southwestern collection. It was an essay for on Robert E. Howard as a humorist a Texas humorist. I did about 6 months of research for that.
Okay.
And that's an article, that's an essay, probably 10,000 words. But in this case, I was chasing down a lot of like really hard to find stuff, things that weren't online. I had to call research libraries. I had to beg librarians to make copies to send me PDFs. So that was a harder than the average thing. I usually don't take that long. But nonfiction starts at about 6 weeks and can go 6 weeks or more.
Sure.
If I'm working. So.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna make a confession. I have not read Blood and Thunder in entirety. I have looked things up. I have the first version, and I always feel, in a perfect world, I would read both. I'd read the first one and I'd read the second one. But I'm gonna ask you right now, which one should I read?
Read the second one. It's got more in it, and it's there's nothing in the first that you're not going to get in the second.
Okay.
But there's a lot more you're going to get in the second. I mean, I added 10,000 words to the Conan chapter alone.
Okay.
So right. there's a lot of extra stuff in there, and it's worth doing that. Yeah, if you're gonna do it once.
Okay. I don't know if you saw about 3 weeks ago, I made a Substack post about things I need to read in the Howard the autobiographical type books, or biographical, right. Not auto, but because I just finally got the Glenn Lord, Post Oaks, and I'm sorry, the Grant Post Oaks. That was
Right.
Lord. Yeah, okay. Who put it
Mhm.
out with Grant? Okay. But that instigated me to look at my shelves and say, I have opened many of these. I've read chapters, but I haven't read the entirety book from cover to cover. So I made this
Sure.
whole list, and I got 20 freaking books to read here. So I'm just going to read them in publication year order because I
I
just want
love
to
it.
see how things change, you know?
That's a great idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. You can watch the scholarship evolve
Right.
like a time lapse.
That's my goal. So we'll see how I do.
Cool.
You're all done writing. You've called it a day. Are you exhausted, need a hot bath and a good drink, or are you ready to get out and rumble?
That's funny. That's a great question. I don't, when I'm done, right? Um, I almost get the equivalent of the zoomies. Um, if I'm finished. If I'm writing something and I get to the end of the day, or I write the thing I need to write because I'm going to come back to it tomorrow, that tends to be exhausting. I don't know
Okay.
why, but there's something. But it's sort of like, I'm trying to keep my energy level up throughout the whole thing, and so I basically save my energy until I can sit back down and hit it again. But if I once I finish something, I'm like, let's go. There's not a lot of other art forms at, that are solo endeavors.
Yeah.
I know artists who keep the ball game on while they draw, and I've been with art jams where everybody's drawing and talking and they're laughing and cracking jokes out of the side of their mouth, and you know there's you can't do that when you write. You have to sit down and kind of shut out everybody else. You can't pay attention to what the other person's doing, and so it's lonely, and that's wonderful if you're the kind of person that's an introvert
Yep.
anyways. But I find that I'm sort of an introverted extrovert. I want to be alone when I'm writing, and then as soon as I'm done, let's go get a let's go get a bite to eat. Let's watch a movie. Let's take a walk. Whatever we're gonna do, I'm ready.
Awesome.
And I don't want to. I'll take a couple of days off once I'm finished as well. I want to
Okay.
be good and past that point, because then when I reopen it to edit, I'm in a different part of my brain, and I'm not thinking,
Yeah.
in terms of continuation. I'm thinking in terms of what does this look like now?
Right.
So that
Right.
helps.
All right. I love it. Would you live in any worlds you've created?
God, no. They're all terrible. They're all just bad. There's death and gunfire and goblins eating people. Just all kinds of, and no, It'd be a nice. I would love to visit, Saturn or Jupiter and the Great Red Eye, in the
Okay.
Lost Empire of Soul. But I just want to do a flyby. I'm not wanting to hang out. I've seen what the pirates there do. It's not pretty. But no, I tend to. That's not me. I'm usually, if I'm writing about something, I'm writing about a problem getting fixed or solved. So it's almost always a contentious
Yeah.
place that they're in. So
And then if you go too far back, there's this little matter of, indoor plumbing and AC.
yeah, what's that about? Please.
So I teach a writing class once a month. It usually prioritizes characters, but this is not, you don't have to give advice on characters, but I give you, as an invited a friend, 30 seconds to give one piece of writing advice to my audience. What would you say?
Write every day.
Yep.
Even if you don't want to write, even if you don't know what you want to write, open up your very cheap notebook and start the page with, I have no idea what to write today. And then go from there. It's just a great habit to get into, and it helps with work, and it helps with your brain.
Yep.
To pull out some of that excess clutter. Get in the habit of writing every day.
Yes.
It will serve you well.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly, and I teach. I don't believe in writer's block personally.
Right.
I believe you can be blocked on what you think you want to write, which
Yes.
is different. So that writing every day, I say just turn it into journaling. You don't know how many stories I've written where suddenly I'm stuck and I just start talking to my grandfather, who's deceased. And then 3 pages later, I'm back because my brain has been working on the story that I've been trying to explain to my grandpa. And then I just cut out
Yeah.
that section and move it to my personal private folder because it's a good conversation, and then get back to the story.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and side by side with this is an axiom I live by. If three people tell you you're drunk, go lie down. So if enough people keep saying you should write every day, go get a pen.
Yeah. Don't tell us you have a story. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I've also found that talking about a story will kill it for
Kills
me.
it. Yeah,
Yep,
absolutely.
absolutely. Just
Yep.
dies in the crib.
Yep. I can't outline. I've talked to
Yeah,
Howard Andrew Jones. I mean, Howard does 30, 40-page outlines for his novels. I did
that doesn't surprise
a
me.
2-page outline, and the very first time I tried to outline, did it. I thought it was really good. I'm about 12,000 words in, and I finally figured out it was hard. It was super hard for me to write. I was bored. I had no
Yeah,
energy because I knew the beats. So basically, when you earlier said beats, I like that because I try to do like, if you're doing a graph, I try to do the two high points or the low point tent poles or whatever, and then I just
right.
write. And because if I know the path, I'm bored, and it's actually a job. It hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My outlining is very limited. I typically only do it for novels, or if I'm or really longer forms, because I want, and my outlining is not more than a sentence or two
Okay.
in each chapter, because I think in every book, um, I either want to advance the plot or the story or the character
Okay.
in each chapter, and every
Right.
chapter should further one of those, and if it
Right.
does two or even three, that's great.
Yeah.
But that just helped me, like, sort of put a pin in where I wanted things to be and how I wanted things to fall. I don't know that I could write a novel without that, but
Makes
I
sense.
I hate it. I
Yeah.
just, because, yeah, maybe because I did that the last time I did it was a mystery novel, and I knew how the murder happened, but you don't get to tell that until the second to last chapter.
Sure.
So I had all this other stuff to go through, and I was like, no, can I just get to the, no, you really can't. You gotta make them work for it. So that was agony. But when I did finish that chapter, it felt like a weight had rolled off of my
Good.
chest. You know?
Cool.
Oh
Okay.
God, yeah. So,
I readily admit that. I mean, I'm not recommending my style because I readily admit that I get sidetracked. A
yeah,
character will take over that's not supposed to. I'll do the rabbit hole, and suddenly I need the guy with the gun busting through the door to save my ass.
right. Yeah, if I know people that do it. Lansdale
Yeah.
writes by the seat of his pants, and bless his heart, man.
Yeah.
But I think what it is I think pantsers are really plotters who keep it in their head. I
Yeah.
think I feel that way, and even if you're not writing it down or thinking about it, you know where you want everything to go. So
Yeah. I'll take that.
yeah,
What do you think is the most difficult thing you have ever written?
Blood and Thunder, hands down.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was doing two things. I was addressing um, previous works,
Okay.
which was a little daunting.
Sure.
And then I was also positing and forwarding my own theses about Howard as a Texas author. And so I found that to be really challenging. And I soft shoot it a little bit with the first edition. I took the chain off in the second edition. And so
Okay.
I go a little harder in the paint on DeCamp than maybe some people liked, but I wasn't. I was factual with
Okay.
what he did and said, and I felt like I needed to kind of be a little bit nicer.
Okay.
But I found that all that did was muddy the waters. So
Sure.
but that was navigating all of that was really the most difficult thing, and I'd never done something of that scale before. I mean, I read great biographies. I, I Flame of Pure Fire, Jack Dempsey and the Roaring Twenties was the book I read just before writing Blood and Thunder. to sort of give me an idea of maybe how I wanted to structure things. It didn't help, but seeing how he put stuff together was like, okay, I can make this a story. I can tell
Okay.
the story and also give information. So that was I learned how to write a biography with Blood and Thunder.
Okay.
So.
I should have said that earlier for anyone who may not know. Blood and Thunder is a biography of Robert E. Howard. An interesting timing. At the time of this recording, Will Oliver's new biography of Robert E. Howard just got announced for a March 25 release. So
very excited about
we'll
that.
add that to the. I'll have 21 books to read now.
I'm stoked for Will's book. He's been working on it for a while, and I feel like he's going to bring some new things to the discussion. So,
well, he definitely is a thorough person. So it's a thick book.
To a fault. Yeah.
All right, Mark, I got some sporting choices for you. This is an either or.
All right.
Swimming pool or shooting pool?
Swimming pool.
All right. Tennis court or basketball court?
Tennis court.
Nice. And driving range or shooting range?
Shooting range. Yeah. Mark Twain said, golf is a good walk, spoiled.
Yes.
And I see no reason to refute America's finest humorist in that endeavor. Yeah.
Agreed. Speaking of that, then, do you have a favorite quote or motivational thought that you would like to share?
I don't know. It's been attributed to Chuck Jones, but a lot of other people have said it as well. Okay. He was referring to his, like, what you tell people who want to get into animation, and his advice was for artists, but I think it applies to anybody doing anything creative. Every artist has 10,000 bad drawings inside of them. The sooner you get started drawing those 10,000 drawings, the sooner you're going to get better afterwards. And that was a real, whether we want to use drawings or paintings or words or stories, you're not going to be good when you start. You're going to be as good as you can be, but you're not going to be in your head what you think. And so the sooner you start writing and start making those mistakes and learning on the fly and trying new things, and until you start that, you're not a writer. You're someone who wants to write. And that's that. I don't think that's gatekeeping to say that. I think in order to be a writer, you have to write. So let's get on it.
Just like shooting free throws, you got to shoot 10,000 of them to make it natural.
That's exactly right.
I mean, so many novelists, it's their 3rd, 7th, 11th novel that actually gets published, and the others are sitting in a trunk.
A lot of 45, 55, 65-year-old overnight successes in the author game. Right. Yeah.
Yep. 10 first thoughts. I'm going to throw a single word at you, and we'd like to hear your thought.
Okay.
Sunset.
Orange.
Alpine.
Colorado.
Crate.
Barrel.
The Bosch Show.
Right, exactly.
Those guys are hilarious. Hugh.
Jackman.
I had the alternative spellings here, and I didn't have that one. Jungle.
Fever.
Sidewalk.
Silverstein.
Cool. Mustang.
Sally.
Legislation.
Quagmire.
Voyage.
Dawn Treader.
That's my favorite Narnia book. And Lemon.
Oh, 12. Yeah.
I don't follow that one.
You said 11?
Lemon.
Oh, Lemon. Lime. Thought you were throwing a number at me. That's awesome. Lime.
Right.
Lemon and lime. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, nonfiction. I mean, you write nonfiction as well, but we talked about fiction quite a bit. So I'd like to know what nonfiction you like to read, and if you have a title or two you'd recommend to people.
I read two different kinds of nonfiction. I read the stuff for whatever I'm researching, whatever that may be.
Okay.
And I've made the decision to stop buying books if I can, and instead use ebooks or something for that. Because what I find is that I'll read a chapter extensively, and then I will put the rest of the book up,
Sure.
and that's not cool. I don't think. But I love reading for understanding, and I love reading historical things, and I like reading to look at a concept sort of as a top-down
Okay.
approach. Mark Kurlansky is a history writer who he wrote Cod, which was real big, and Salt. I like those kinds of world history books where you can see how salt impacted the world in ways that we do not understand because we're used to just picking it up off the table and putting some on eggs.
Hmm.
But it was currency at one point. People went to war
Right.
over salt mining. So that, stuff like that. Recently, I read The Black Pill, which talked about how the internet, how the dark web kind of took over like the internet in terms of memes and thoughts and stuff like that. She was embedded with those people
Okay.
for like 10 years.
Huh.
And so she got really close to people and opened up and talked to them, and they talked to her. And it was fascinating. And it really filled in a lot of those, like, why are people like that questions.
Huh.
She actually had some good answers for it. There's one that I'm about to start called The Absinthe Forger. And I love these kind of quirky books about, like, a guy who goes investigating the history of absinthe. And along the way, he finds this guy that seemingly has this cache of old, like, actual absinthe back when it was like the illegal stuff that people pay good money for. And so the story is about the history of absinthe and where this guy fits in and how he was able to dupe all these collectors and what it all means. And I'm like, wow, I love those kinds of books because
Okay.
it's such a deep dive. And I always come away with ideas for stories from stuff like
Sure.
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you have the name, the author of that one?
I don't.
Okay,
It's
not a
called
problem.
the Absinthe Forger
Okay.
is the title.
All right. I will find them. Cool. That is
It'll pop up.
quite a
Yeah.
smorgasbord.
Okay, that's kind of all over the place.
Yeah. So sticking with the same line there, do you have a visual artist whose works move you that you just go, wow?
Jeez. Too many to mention, but I'll go ahead and tell you today's
Okay.
artist.
I got
It'll be different tomorrow, but I get my breath is taken away when I look at the pre-Raphaelites.
Okay.
Dante Gabriel Rossetti, John Singer Sargent, all of those people who are working in this sort of romantic, sort of naturalistic era where they were going back past just straight religious iconography. And they were doing some amazing, just romantic, lush sort of things. I get lost when I see those guys. I mean, and especially looking at them live. When you see the actual works themselves, it's not like a book, and it's certainly not like a computer screen. I was moved to tears the first time I saw a Rossetti like up close. Chicago's Art Institute has a small collection of pre-Raphaelites right next to their Impressionist gallery,
Okay.
and all of it was just arresting. Yeah. I'd never really thought much about Impressionist, and I never quite got it. But there's something, when you photograph things, you flatten the plane.
Yep.
When you're looking at artwork, natural light, theatrical light, museum light plays with the subtle textures of the paint, some of which is a quarter of an inch thick in places,
Sure.
and it creates a kind of a bas relief, if you will, that you don't get in a painting,
Right.
or in a photograph. So seeing that stuff, just yeah. And if you Ask me tomorrow and I'll say Frazetta. You know, I mean, I love art the way I love music. Anything that bounces around in my head makes me think of other things.
Yep.
I used to stare at Frank Frazetta's Frost Giants painting
Okay.
until my eyes would water. I never understood how he could make the mountains look so far away and so snow covered, and then have this hyper detailed muscle,
Right.
with Conan's arm from when he swung
Yep.
it's a magic trick to me. It's sorcery, it's fell witchcraft, and I'll have none of it. But I love all of that kind of stuff. I just love it when people are passionate about stuff, and I tend to
Right.
enjoy older, more painterly people like Howard Pyle and
Yep.
people like that. Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of commonality. I mean, obviously, a lot of the people I'm interviewing, I've already worked with, and we're in this circle, even though they might write things that I don't write. But there's a lot of commonality in the art. But I like getting all these names because maybe somebody watching this just doesn't recognize a name, and then they go look them up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's who did that painting I love," and stuff like that.
yeah. I hope so, because the Pre-Raphaelites and the Brandywine guys were incredibly influential to people right now.
Yeah. Yep.
And I know that there's people walking around who love Barry Windsor Smith and don't know anything about the Pre-Raphaelites, or wondered how Gary Gianni could make his stuff look like it was really old.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I love that.
I did not give you the halfway count, and we are going to set a new record, Mark. It's probably my fault. We have broken the 42 minutes, and we have 4 questions yet to go.
All right.
How do you go about giving depth to a character, and do you treat the level of character differently? Second, primary, secondary, third?
I have an advantage with the main character
Okay.
because I'm usually in their head.
Okay.
And so I like to do little asides and explorations. That is a holdover of my interest in American pulp authors like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. I like that inner monologue that they use, and I think you can get a lot of mileage out of that. And I also like that with unreliable narrators. Secondary and tertiary characters have to be a little bit more succinct because you don't have the advantage of hopping into their heads, and so they tend to be more, I think, sharply delineated. I've got a pair of goblins in a series of heist and caper stories that don't really ever say much, but when they do say something, it's a thing, like
Okay.
it's a necessary thing, or it's either going to be something funny that makes the scene work, or it's going to be something kind of creepy that the main character can go, yeah, that's goblins for you. And then that makes a little world building out of it. So
Right.
I like doing those sorts of little asides. I think that's a real natural way to broaden characters and your world that way.
Have you found I like reading that? But have you found, so in my experience, the sword and sorcery side of fantasy does not seem to like those inner thoughts or monologues much.
They don't, and I think that is a holdout from the old days. That third person limited omniscience served a lot of people well, whether we're talking about David Gemmell with Druss,
Yeah.
or Karl Edward Wagner's Kane. You never really kind of get like the whole picture, but you get this sort of, you get to know that one character really well.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of different ways to tell a story.
Sure.
But I honestly really at this point, I prefer one. I almost if not a first person, I like staying in one person's head.
Yeah.
And I think it's just easier to write, and also I think it's easier for readers to if he's the guy telling you the story, then you can kind of relax and sit back. You don't have to worry about, oh, am I going somewhere else after this?
Right.
And as soon as I say that, I think about Donald Westlake, who wrote caper and crime fiction for his entire career, and would do a thing where every fourth chapter of his heist novel is the other side. He'd do 3 chapters with the main character, and then the 4th chapter flip over to this other guy, and you get his thoughts, and you go, oh no, he's about to mess things up for the guy. And then it's 3 more chapters of your main character, and then we go back to that one guy again. And I'm like, only Westlake gets away with that. There's not a lot of people who can do that and make it work.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I guess I have not read him. I know the name, but that's interesting.
Richard Stark is what you want to check out.
Okay, that's why I know the name.
Richard Stark, the Parker novels.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, the guy who will never finish his series and got a big HBO show out of it, he had every other chapter be a different character.
He did, and I think it was too much. But I'm not going to give George any guff because he basically, he's a smart enough guy and he's a accomplished enough writer. When you look at that, you go, that's the story he wanted to tell. I'm not sure I would have done it the same way. In fact, I know I wouldn't have. And I wish he had done it differently, but I can't fault him for it. He's doing the 100 Years' War with dragons and zombies. Right. So, you gotta follow your heart, head. What are we doing with that? I don't know, but yeah, not everybody can pull that off. I think right. We write at our level of capability
and hopefully deliver on it. Yep.
Mm.
All right. So, which of your own characters would you hang out with?
I would the guy that I mentioned earlier, the heist and caper, the fantasy stuff. The main character is named Larson. Okay. I'd hang out with him. He's got good stories. Okay. And he would be fun to run with because he's always a couple of steps ahead, but also you're going to get a lot of intel on everybody else in the tavern, or whatever. He can summon, or he can suss things out.
His running dialogue.
Yeah, I like those kinds of characters. I think they're just fun, and it's not a chore to write him. That's okay. What I like about that. I never have to go, oh, what's he going to say or do? I know what he's going to say or do. We all know what he's going to say or do. It's going to usually be the thing that gets us in more hot water. Uh-huh. And that's, yeah.
Sounds a little bit like you. So that leads into my favorite question of the whole list. Who writes the characters you enjoy reading the most?
Boy, that's a good question.
Stack of books, and you see a particular one knowing a particular character's in it, and you grab it.
I have reread most of the aforementioned Donald Westlake's Parker novels.
Okay.
I find those are addictive like Skittles. I just, can't eat one. I got to keep going. Something a little more contemporary. I think Aileen Martinez writes really interesting and compelling characters. I put him kind of in the same category with Christopher Moore, who also writes very character-centric novels. It's almost always about the person and it's happening to them or whatever. So those tend to be authors. I tend to not chase a character so much as I chase an author. I'll read anything that, like right now, Marshall Ryan Maresca's Meridane stories are just wonderful. Okay. And they're so different and so spread out, but no two characters are alike, and their stories are all kind of interconnected in that it's like he's doing a shared universe with just himself. So there's lots of cool crossovers and intersections there, but his stuff is very strongly character centered, and sometimes to a fault, where they're making a bad decision, or that he can't help but do that thing, and you're just like, so anytime you can get a reader to vocalize, whether it's a laugh or a moan or a God damn it, like whatever it is,
right?
Anytime you can get that, you've won.
Exactly.
As an author. Yeah. That's the goal. Get an outburst.
Can you do me a favor? I don't know that Martinez. What was the first name?
A. Lee Martinez.
A. Lee. Okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That will be a new one for me. Cool. If you could write anybody's character from any medium, what character would it be?
You're going to make me say it, aren't you?
Uh-huh.
You're gonna make me say Conan, aren't you?
No, you can say whatever character you want.
I don't know that I could do it for long. I have a Conan story I want to tell.
Yeah. Okay.
In the same way that I have a Spider-Man story I want to tell, and stuff like that. Probably the thing that I would most want to do would be to write that Conan story my way. I think it is folly to try and write like Robert E. Howard.
True.
I just can't imagine that being anything. But I think I could write the things that make what I think a good Conan story. I think I could do that my way without damaging my reputation or impugning the honor of the character.
Okay. Yeah.
There will be some people who disagree with that because, pastiche haters are going to pastiche hate.
Yeah.
but yeah, that's what I'd have a go at Conan. Yeah.
Cool.
Why not? It's weird. I would at this point I would do Conan, but I would never try to do a Sailor Steve Costigan because I think I couldn't do a Costigan story and have it not be a pastiche. It would be just exactly like that, and that's not what I want to do.
I actually thought you'd say the other, the Western. Yeah.
Oh, El Barak?
Yeah. No, Elkins.
Oh, Breck Elkins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all of that stuff,
Yeah.
would be fun to play with. Breck Elkins kind of is the same thing for Costigan for me. It would be real hard to try and do that and make it Howardy and funny.
Okay.
It might be thin funny, but I don't know that people would want to read it for that. So I would, yeah. That's why I'd rather do El Barak or I'd rather do Conan because I think there's a lot more latitude with those characters. El Barak is virtually untapped. I would love to do a full El Barak story,
Yep. That would be very interesting to see where this Titan series goes if they continue these shorts. So, all right, sir. Last question.
Yes.
Are you trying to, share anything with your entire history of writing with the world, or your family, or just yourself?
I tend to write for me. I long ago decided that I was going to write. I didn't want to write anything I didn't want to write. And so that's limited some of what I've been able to do professionally. I've had people ask me to write stuff that I didn't have any sort of affiliation or affinity for. And I'd rather not write it than write it badly or write it, and get it wrong. So I tend to write for myself. I write to make me happy. What's a story I would want to read? What about this would make me go, oh yeah, that was fun.
Okay.
So that I tend to keep my own counsel where that's concerned. That being said, I want the story to be something that other people enjoy. So I try very hard to put as much of me into what I'm writing as I can, fiction or nonfiction, but make it accessible so that it's not just a bunch of, personal asides and in jokes or, whatever. I feel like I've gotten pretty good at having that kind of a barometer where I can say to myself, yeah, this is too much, or no, it needs to be more like this. And I've been very fortunate, honestly, I think, to be able to write kind of whatever weird thing I wanted to write and have people read it and comment on it and like it. I mean, that's wonderful, and I don't know that I could ask for more than that, really.
Right, getting the input and on such a wide range of novels, nonfiction books, blog posts, short stories. You're all over. So
I am, and that's another to my detriment as well. I mean, if I only stuck to writing historical romances, I'm sure we wouldn't be having this conversation because I'd be on a yacht. But I can't.
Okay, all right.
I just can't. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it.
You need to jump on that romantasy thing. It's
big. Romantasy.
Yeah.
He was a barbarian from the wilds of the north. She was a pirate on her own for the first time. Together, they're in love. Yeah, I could do that.
All right, I'm calling the time at
All right.
57 minutes. We
Outstanding.
went nice and long. But this is where you actually get free reign. You can talk as
Oh,
long as you'd like about three C's. I'd like something cold you'd like us to pay a little bit more attention to, something
okay.
current or recent, and then something coming if you can reveal anything you're working on or something that's soon to be appearing.
Sure. Cold.
Yes, sir.
The thing that I think could use probably a little more attention is I think that there's not a lot of people paying attention to Howard studies right now. I know that's kind of a broad topic, but over the last 10 years, there's been one or two books a year that comes out with essays, or it's a biography, or it's, a travel log or something. There's always something coming out. Sometimes it's just a re-release of something that's been out of print for a long time, like
Okay.
the Foundation Press's Post Oaks and Sand Roughs. That's great because it's a one-stop shop. It's got his book plus all the other stuff in it.
Right.
So if you're a Robert E. Howard or a Sword and Sorcery fan, I think those things are definitely worth looking at. There's a lot of small press people that are doing really really good stuff. Hippocampus Press
Okay.
is one of them.
Yep.
Derek does some amazing books, and I'm like I said, I mentioned Will Oliver's forthcoming book, but Bobby Deary's been putting out a bunch of scholarship.
Yes.
I recommend his stuff a lot. Um, I think what's happening in Howard Studies is really exciting, and there's not a lot of people kind of noticing it. So I'd like to see some of that.
Okay.
Currently, I am publishing a zine for gaming. I'm doing a zine for 5e called Polite Society, the zine for rogues, thieves, and scoundrels, and
Okay.
it's all about how to do heist and crimes in a Dungeons and Dragons style setting. This is a topic I've been writing about for a while now,
Yes.
and I'm writing these zines to sort of get all this out. My intention is to eventually collect it all into one
Okay.
big thing. But the zines are a really great way to send out some material and have people see it and comment on it and give you some feedback.
Are they in
I'm
physical
enjoying that.
form? Sorry. Are they in physical form or just
I Yeah, the Kickstarter was for the physical zines,
okay.
and then I decided that I was only going to do PDFs on DriveThruRPG because
Okay.
I didn't because my intention was not to that wasn't going to be the end of it. That was going to be the beginning of it. But I do have the other gaming stuff that I've been working on that is available in paperbacks
Okay.
as well. So that's gettable. Um, Coming is kind of all related to this. Uh, Toward the end of this year, uh, Baen Books is going to publish an anthology that I co-edited called Swords and Larceny. And it is going to be a collection of heist and caper fiction in fantasy worlds.
Cool.
And yeah, I'm real excited about that. I'm happy with the kinds of stories that are coming in. You're going to see some Howardists and Conan people in there doing cool stuff. I'm real excited about that. I'm hoping that comes out. I think tentatively it's scheduled for October, but don't quote me on that. Just
Okay.
kind of keep an eye on Baen. But this is the first anthology that I've done with a major publisher,
Yeah.
and so I'm really stoked and hopeful that people will like it because it would mean that they would come back and say, "Hey, you want to do another one?" And I
Right.
would say, "Yes." So, Swords and Larceny is the title, and that will be out later this year. Hopefully, everybody will want to check it out. I'm looking forward to seeing the reaction to it.
That is sweet news. I love hearing that. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Oh, and one more thing,
Okay.
it's forthcoming. I mentioned that book from A&M
Yes.
University Southwestern Studies. That is going to be a collection of essays making the case for Robert E. Howard as a Southwestern writer, first and foremost. It might seem like a stretch, but this is something that I've been kind of talking about ever since Blood and Thunder.
Right.
the idea that Texas informed Howard's stuff, the more I worked with the humorous material, the more I found out that there wasn't anything else like it. So my essay is going to be about how Howard might have pioneered what we think of as Texas humor in a published form.
Okay.
But because he wrote down what was originally orally distributed. So
Right. Yeah.
And other people are in it that are going to have some really great articles in this vein as well. I'm hoping that it will be out by June. I'm hoping for Howard Days we see it.
Okay.
But I'm really excited about that anthology. I think it's going to be great, and hopefully that will change and update the conversation a little bit.
Do you have a title of that at all?
I don't yet. No,
Okay. All right.
I don't know what they're going to call it. But coming from A&M and
Yep.
coming from their Southwestern studies,
Okay.
I'm hoping it's the thing that makes the Texas literati, the Institute of Letters and such,
Okay.
maybe take another look at Howard from the point of view of a Southwestern author instead
Sure.
of a guy in the genre ghetto, you
Right.
know?
Yep. Exactly. Very awesome news. It was a pleasure having you, Mark. I think I'm the one who pushed this over just because I like asking you additional questions.
I was thrilled. This is a great conversation. Great questions. I was happy to be involved, man. Thanks very much for having me.
All right. Well, I appreciate getting to know your life, universe, and everything. My thanks to Mark for sharing his life, universe, and everything with 24 and 42. Mark's enthusiasm for all things Robert E. Howard, heroics, and pulp culture is unbridled and contagious. He is involved in lots of such things, and I am grateful for all the time he spent with my endeavors, from story and essay writing to this interview. And you heard it here, folks, 2 new Sword and Sorcery related titles with Finn's name attached. Fiction anthology from Baen and nonfiction critical collection from Texas A&M. You all find some Mark Finn work and read it now, you hear? Until next time, this was 24 in 42.